Hello and welcome to Count Me In. I'm Adam Larson, your host, and today I'm joined by Melissa Broughton, an accomplished author and founder and owner of Busy Bee Advisors. Melissa's journey is a powerful example of resilience and the importance of forging your own path. In today's episode, Melissa shares how her passion for accounting sparked early on, influenced by her family, and how that led her through the ups and downs of corporate lives. She opens up about her leap into entrepreneurship, growing Busy Bee Advisors from the ground up, and the rapid challenges of scaling a business. Melissa also discovers her latest initiative, 1 Hour Bookkeeper, which empowers stay-at-home parents and military spouses to build flexible, fulfilling careers in bookkeeping. So whether you're curious about leaving the corporate America, building a business, or just love hearing stories of perspective and growth, you're in the right place. Let's dive into Melissa's story. Melissa, so excited to have you on the podcast. We're going to talk about a number of different things, especially your story. And so maybe you can take us back to the beginning. Like, what kind of drew you to accounting in the first place? What was your kind of early career look like?
So first, Adam, thanks for having me. We'll start with that. What drew me to accounting? I think the story that I tell most people is that I fell in love with accounting when I was in high school. I had an extra period that I needed to fill, and there was a teacher who was known for giving easy A's, and he was the accounting instructor. And that was, I would say, as a somewhat adult, if we can call high schoolers adults, somewhat as an adult, really where my path started. But I think it started back further than that. I remember, my grandma was kind of the original single mom. Back in the 60s when she was raising my mom and her three siblings, it was not normal to have a solo parent supporting a household. And my grandma did, and she did it she worked at the hospital. She was a radiologist at a hospital that was pretty close to the house, but then to also, kind of bridge the gap, if you will, she did bookkeeping for a few small, I would say, local neighborhood businesses. And, I remember she didn't drive. So I remember either getting to ride the bus with her to go pick up papers, or she would have some of her clients would come and drop paperwork and stuff like that off at the house. But I just remember sitting and watching her kind of go through whatever the monthly routine was. I didn't really have a clue, I think, at that point, what it was that she was doing, but I fell in love with paperwork very early on. And then my mom worked as a bookkeeper in a bank, so I do have very strong memories of getting to sit on the floor under her desk. And it kind of funny, I would sit on the floor under her desk anytime the boss was coming down. And, of course, you weren't supposed to have your child there at work. Well,
Yeah.
fast forward probably 5 years, and my mom and that boss ended up getting married, and he was my stepfather for most of my life. But sitting on the floor and watching the calculator tape kind of fall over the back of the desk, and it's funny because I don't even know many bookkeepers that still have the 10 key anymore. I have one somewhere in my office, but it hasn't been plugged in years. So I come from a long line of bookkeepers and accountants, and it just really felt like, on one side, it felt like it was kind of destined for me to fall
Mhm.
into this role, but on the other side, really, when I took that class in high school, that was when I absolutely fell in love with it. And yeah, so it's a great story, I think.
That is a great story because it's interesting how you kind of saw it as a child, and it kind of goes to show, as parents, you never really know what your kids are going to latch onto, what you're doing as a parent, and what they're going to do in their lives, which is really interesting. How did that kind of mold as you went into college and then started working in like corporate America? As you think back to how your mom and your grandma were keeping books, and then how you had to do it probably differently as technology and things evolved as you started working.
Sure. So I would say I saw that my mom worked far more in the what you would call the corporate structure. So for me,
Okay.
went to college, had an internship. The first internship was at one of the what Big Ten, I guess you would call it, accounting firms, one of the massive accounting firms that had locations around the world, essentially. And I thought, okay, this is the path I'm supposed to follow. That had been what, my mom, who really had a career in it, had work, like her work style. And I hated it. I didn't like the big corporate environment. And so there was kind of a moment of panic. And my husband and I laugh about this because he, his whole life, he had thought he would play professional ball. I mean, he had been groomed to play football from an early age, right? Played ball in high school, played ball in college, and then, junior year, he blew his knee out and his football career was over. Well, here I've worked and put everything towards, there was no backup plan. There was no, if I don't like this, I'll do something else. This was what I had gone to school for. This is what I had really thought I would do. And here I'm interning for this company and I hated it. And so there was a little bit of a moment of panic, I think, when I was in my very early 20s. And so I left the big firm and I went to a smaller, kind of more of a mom and pop shop and found that that was a lot better of a fit for me. But even with that, I still found that I didn't necessarily love the tax side of things, although I do think the tax side of things is interesting, but I really love the bookkeeping side of things. So it's interesting how our path, um when we find that we don't like things, how that can guide us to helping us make decisions rather than, just wanting to give up altogether. So I'm certainly happy that I didn't just throw it all away.
Yeah, obviously we'd be having a much different
We
conversation if
would
you had
be, we would
decided to make
be.
a big different change. I think it's interesting how like when you were at the very big firm and then you switched to like a mom and pop firm, what was the difference between like as far as I mean, obviously there's the normal corporate structure. Like if you have a huge firm, you're more of just a number line item in the grand scheme of things, and we're more mom and pop's shop. Things are a little more down to earth and more connected. But what was the difference that you like? Because a lot of times people don't really talk about the difference between working at a huge firm and a more small and medium sized business.
I think the biggest difference was that with that larger firm experience, it was you were truly a cog in the machine and you are doing
Yeah.
one thing all day, every day. Your day, Monday through Friday, really doesn't change. Like you're doing, for me, I think I was coding a certain like 15 line items of things, and that was it. So it was very specific, just doing that all day, every day versus when you're with that smaller firm and kind of that smaller experience, there's no day is the same. Every day is a little bit different. You have different interactions with different people. One of the things for me that I've always kind of noticed that's a little bit different about me is I really do like that people interaction. I like being able to explain things to people. I like being able to do that financial translation of sorts, to break it down
Hmm.
to somebody who maybe doesn't understand it. And with that larger corporate firm experience, there was really never an opportunity to have that, any kind of public interaction at all. So
It's interesting. Yeah, I like that. It's the more connectedness of the more connectedness of a small organization sometimes is more helpful and less stressful. And sometimes you can slow down a little bit and learn a lot more. Obviously, it can be more stressful in other ways because you have to wear many hats when you're in a smaller organization.
you do. And it becomes harder to take vacations. And there's just the difference of, so worked for an accounting firm and then went into kind of moving up my way with different companies in the corporate structure till I was really, gosh, my last three positions, I was either in charge of the accounting department or I was, maybe it was myself and an admin that was the accounting department. It really there's a lot of autonomy that comes with it. There's a lot of, I mean, you kind of get the inside track and it can be a positive or a negative, but all of the issues that are going on with the company. If there's, stress that the owners are feeling. In some cases, you kind of feel like you're the cause of the stress if you're in
Hmm.
a position where the company is operating, at a loss or in the red. You're feeling that stress along with the owners of the company. And, I've been in the unfortunate position of having to get in heated debates, I would say, with my bosses who are also the owners of the company because they're just, their spending habits that are not being supported by the income of the business and having those hard conversations. Um, but my career has been it's been very interesting. I've had a lot of fascinating opportunities. I went from working for an accounting firm to moving my way up to a controller of a company to then kind of going into, I would say, somewhat self-employment where I would have companies that would hire me to do, I would call it like internal audits when they felt that somebody was, maybe stealing from the company. Myself and I had two other people that worked with me that we would be brought in to kind of see if the suspicions were correct and present them with the information. And I would say the only thing about that that was frustrating was that I would present the, you know, who in my opinion had been wronged with this information, and then they would in most cases not do anything with it. So that was always the frustrating part about it. I would spend 2 or 3 months piecing together this essentially this case for them, and then they would say, "Okay, that's good information to know," and then nothing would ever happen. Yeah, there's your face is exactly the face that my husband would get when I would be like, "They're not gonna press charges." So it's, yeah, I've had a very interesting career.
Yeah, we could probably have a whole conversation going down that rabbit hole, but I won't do that today because I'm really
Okay.
curious about your current role because you went to start your own organization. So maybe we can start with what was it like, quitting and starting your own thing, like moving from because obviously you just mentioned you had kind of been seeing how things work in the background. So you were almost like being prepared to kind of run your organization. But what was it like quitting and starting your own thing?
It was like jumping off of the high dive blindfolded.
Okay.
No, it's true. I think the scariest thing about starting your own business is that open calendar, and that's something
Mm.
that I will talk about to coaching students that I have and things along those lines. But before we get there, so it was yeah, it was scary and it was exciting all at the same time. I took the leap. I bet on myself, which I think when we bet on ourselves, we're making the best bet out there. But I still had a family that was at least partially dependent on, me, at least if we wanted to live a comfortable lifestyle and have, the opportunity to, go on vacations or go out to dinner occasionally. I mean, yeah, we could have, I guess, we could have been okay on just one income, but it's expensive, especially with two kids who have desires to, do all of the stuff, right? All of the sports and all of the things. So me working was a necessity and I never minded it. And I liked working. I just didn't like necessarily working for somebody else and not having any flexibility. So what was it, 2016, I left corporate America, as I say, and took the leap and branched out on my own. And of course, as most things go, it was not quite that straight path, right? There was some excitement along the way, but yeah, but branched out and opened Busy Bee Advisors in 2016, and that was a fantastic decision.
What was kind of that first month like when you're starting a business? Because a lot of times we talk about, I talk to people who are entrepreneurs, and when I talk to people who are entrepreneurs and they've started their own thing, I don't always get to ask that question. Like, what was it like that for those first few days, those early days as you're kind of getting your feet wet and kind of understanding how, like, just getting things rolling?
I think, one of the things it truly was a little bit scary because first I had the support of my husband, but I did not want to take that, for granted. I didn't want to
Hmm.
disappoint him. Of course, I didn't want to disappoint my kids either. It felt like everybody was watching. And I think that's what a lot of entrepreneurs feel is they feel like, "Oh, everybody's watching me and they're judging everything I'm doing," and they kind of make up more stress than really that there really is, because really what the people who are watching you want is they want you to be happy and, of course, they want you to be successful. But I knew one thing that would absolutely kill me was if I didn't have that structured schedule. So that
Hmm.
was probably the first. If I could give anybody out there who's thinking about starting any type of a business, structure your schedule and live by your calendar. Um, and I essentially treated my calendar or my date book as the same way as I would my boss at work, right? I held myself accountable to what was on the calendar. And I did that because I wanted to avoid the panic setting in, and that if I had time where there was really nothing going on, then I would, maybe start to question had I made the right choice and things like that. So I didn't want there to be a chance that that negative thought could creep in. And so I found that I just lived by my calendar.
Wow. So let's talk about growth. You're 9 years in, from 2016. And when we're recording this, when this will be released, it'll be 2026. And so, you'll be 10 years into your business. Let's talk about growth and trajectory. Like, what was that like as things were growing and how you scaled? Because scaling's not easy, especially if you go too fast, too quickly. Sometimes businesses can't keep up. What has it been like as you've kind of grown as an organization?
So we did that. We grew way too fast.
Okay.
As part of that calendar that I lived by, I knew that anytime I wasn't spending on, working on clients' books, I needed to be spending on getting out there and promoting this brand new company. Any networking event, anything possible that I could go to, I was going to. And my objective for myself was to get out there and give out at least 300 cards a week. And so that, I mean, sometimes I'll say that to people and they're like, "Yeah, that doesn't sound like a lot." And then in other times I'll say it to people and they're like, "Oh my gosh." But to me it was, I could get I would grab a stack of 300 business cards and I would break it out to I would try to do like 10 events a week and 30 cards per event. And just my objective when I first started was just to get as many cards out as I possibly could. Well, what happened was that probably 2 weeks into doing that, those people started reaching back out. And so our first month or I should say my first month in business because there was nobody else working with me at the time. We closed the first month with 26 clients and I had no processes in place. I had no like every single step was kind of a figure it out as I went. Okay, so this has
Hmm.
presented itself. I should figure it out. And one of the best pieces of advice that I'm sure it was some motivational speaker that said, if you're going to do something more than once, document it. And so what I did was anytime there was something, whether it was an email or a letter or anything that I thought I would ever have the potential of doing more than once, I documented it. And so I had all of these resource files that at first it started to feel like, gosh, I'm crazy. I'm taking twice as much time to do things because I'm, documenting everything. But then by about month 2 or 3, I really started to see that now, when I'm sending that same email over and over and over and over again, I'm just copying and pasting and it's, taking a tenth of the time. So that was a huge time saver for me when I was first starting. By month 2, that was when I knew, um, well, I mean, we were on our way to probably $500,000 in sales our first year in business, which was crazy. Um,
Yeah.
by the second month, I was like, "Okay, I'm working longer hours than what I was working for somebody else, so something has to give here a little bit." So um, I hired my first employee, and again, that's a little bit of a scary thing when you first I was home based at the time, so
Hmm.
that's kind of crazy of, "Hey, you should come work for me at my house, at my dining room table. It'll be great. I
That's not
promise it's
sketchy
a
at
real
all.
job." So she was awesome. She definitely grew with the company, but yeah, so month 2 I hired or 3, right around there, I hired my first employee. As an admin, I knew that administrative
Mm.
help was what I needed more than bookkeeping help. And then by our 5th month, that was when I really started building the team and started hiring bookkeepers and stuff like that.
Wow. That's quite a story because not every business can say, hey, I started and then I'm well on my way to almost $500,000 my first year. Not every business can say that. And then I think that's a testament to the work you were doing. But also, how did you? So I want to point back to what you were saying before when we first started talking, you're telling your story, how you hated the corporate work, how you hated those things. And how did you lay a different foundation so that your employees didn't end up like you were in the future as you're building your own organization?
Well, I think the biggest thing I did first, I will say I'm probably one of the worst managers ever. I constantly have to uh, read books on how to be a better manager. I treat other people the way I want to be treated, and I don't like to be micromanaged. So I will present the information, assume the person who I'm giving the information to is an adult. And if they have questions, that they will ask questions. And if not, just trust that they're handling it. Now, I will say I've been incredibly lucky. My team definitely works very well. I think my office manager, who's like the glue that holds our whole company together. I think if I started like asking her questions about everything, she'd probably want to strangle me. It's not the right work environment though for everybody. So I think there was a lot of luck. I think a lot of things. There was just a lot of being in the right place at the right time. But, one of the biggest things I can say was just trying something and being willing to say, "This isn't working." And that's the benefit of a small, and you're probably gonna have to edit this, but that's the benefit of a small work environment, right? Is that you can very quickly course correct. You can say on Monday,
Mm,
okay, here's the policies and procedures for doing XYZ. And then on Wednesday, say, yeah, that's not working and we're going to change.
mm.
You can't do it too much to your team. Otherwise, they tend to get very frustrated with you, but it is pretty easy to course correct with a smaller company. And so we've just been very adaptable. We've looked at, okay, this is what clients are wanting. And if this is what they're wanting, it's the find a need and fill it. So what I saw in the marketplace in 2016 was that there were lots of small businesses out there that could not justify the expense of having a full charge bookkeeper or a staff accountant or somebody even a part-time bookkeeper. They just couldn't justify the expense, or they didn't have the office space
Yeah.
to have that person sitting there. And so my first few clients were in the automotive industry, because to me, it was very easy to say, okay, there's a mom and pop, auto repair shop. Now, I don't know anything. I probably know about as much about cars as I do about football, which is hilarious because I've been around the automotive industry for decades now. Some of my best friends own automotive, repair shops. And it's like, nope, not going to learn any of it. But the truth of it is that, the ins and outs of money are money, and the pluses and minuses are the same no matter what the industry is. And what I saw was that it made sense that an auto shop would have a small desk at the front, probably not office space in the back. They would have all of their, bays for fixing cars. And so that became an easy target of, they would be the ideal client that would need my services. And so I really started with that and had a few other very interesting kind of out of the way types of companies that needed a remote bookkeeper. And that was how I went about finding my clients, was by really selling you don't have the space and you can't really justify the expense of $60,000, $70,000 or more a year for that person. And so why not give, the company a try, and it worked. So that was our pitch when we first started.
Yeah. Well, and I like how, and you found the need. You found a need that your business could fulfill, and especially organizations and potential clients. And that's kind of a model of like, hey, these are ways for me to get in the door. You you've mentioned that you started off in your house, and I know that you moved to an office space and now you're fully remote. Maybe we could talk a little bit, what was that transition like leading your team through those different places of, house, office space and then fully remote, especially because of obviously probably COVID.
Totally because of COVID that we moved back, but we were, gosh, at the height of it, there were 22 of us in the multiple office suites. We were in what you would call like a professional office building where they had small
Mhm.
offices, and as we would grow, we would just take over another suite and take over another suite and take over another suite. And what happened, the pandemic hit and we realized that it was like our clients never were coming to the office. Even before then, really weren't ever coming to the
Yeah.
office to see us. We figured out early on that we were wasting so much time with the commuting back and forth to go to different client locations, or wasting time by waiting for a client to come to us. And then, 5 minutes before their appointment, they call and they say, "Oh, I'm not going to make it," or "I'm going to be, late," or whatever it was. That was one of those issues that needed to be fixed. And so our solution to it was, to just be completely remote. Because if I know that, I'm waiting for a Zoom meeting to start, it's very different than preparing an office or a space for, a client coming in, right? If somebody doesn't
Mhm.
show up, there's going to be other things that I can do to fill that time. But the transitioning a team, so when we were home based originally, it was myself and my admin. When we moved into the office, it became huge opportunity. It became a huge opportunity for us to grow. We utilized that to hire. I think we hired 3 bookkeepers initially, and then kind of continued growth from there. So I was super small, as far as it was just one other person that worked with me when I was home based originally. We moved into the office. We pretty steadily grew. We developed a tax team. We had, 3 administrative support people on staff. And then we had, a whole bunch of bookkeepers that were on staff.
Mhm.
What happened with the pandemic, aside from us moving back to our house for our kind of our home base, was that people, of course, were told, okay, you shouldn't leave your house. You can't go into work. You're going to get in trouble. Even though it was very interesting that our business was considered, like, whatever it was okay for us to stay open. We had a lot of people that were now saying, "Well, can I work from home?" And so
Mhm.
what had happened was, rather than fight it, we just looked at it and went, "Okay, what happens if we don't fight this? If this is what every single one of our employees is asking for, and they are going to be irritated if we don't say yes," because in some
Mhm.
ways, I think employees are a lot like 3-year-olds, where if you don't give them what they want, they get very cranky and then they become passive aggressive. And so it was, how do we make it a yes? And we decided to just, allow them to work remotely and have the same trust that they would be doing as good of a job working remotely as they would be if they were in an office. And we were not disappointed. So I guess by having that kind of hands-off approach to management, it worked really well, because we had a team that was incredibly happy. And then some of those team members had opportunities that led them to go into other things. Our office manager at the time decided she wanted to go back to school to become a teacher. She had not much time to finish in her degree. She went back to school and then left to teach, and she's now a high school history teacher. And we had some other people that left as well. But at the same time,
Mhm.
we had the opportunity now of not having to just look for people in our own backyard to hire from, but really from anywhere in the country. And so that that kind of led us to I don't know, a new opportunity, I'll say, as far as that goes. So I love the expression on your face. So, I think one of the things that my husband will often say that I am able to do is, something will happen and I'll see a situation and I'll go, "Oh, that's interesting. That's an opportunity for something else, and maybe something somebody
Mhm.
hadn't even seen." So, taking the same philosophy of, if I'm going to do something once, I should document it. What I started doing with any of the new bookkeepers that I was bringing on, because we were probably training, I don't know, 5 to 7 bookkeepers a month, because we
Mhm.
either had we either had enough new clients coming in that we needed to bring in a new bookkeeper, or maybe we would have one bookkeeper that had been with us for a while that was leaving, and so it would take 2 new bookkeepers to replace that one person. It seemed that we were constantly hiring and constantly training bookkeepers. And so I really carefully documented our process for everything, right? I mean, I just, rather than it being in my brain and me having to be on Google Meet or Zoom meetings to train them, I started documenting it, creating videos. And then I'm looking at these videos and looking at this training and thinking, well, I think that I truly could teach anybody how to become a bookkeeper. And
Mm,
the demand is out there. I mean, the demand was there when we started in 2016 that, led us to our second year in business, hitting $1 million in revenue. The demand is still out there today. The demand did not slow down for us during the pandemic. And that sweet spot has always been for us, those small companies that
mhm.
either don't have the space to hire an accounting person or don't really have enough need to have an accounting person on staff, right? And
Yeah,
so if I know that there's the demand and I can then teach you how to do the skills of bookkeeping are simple. I mean, it's math, right? Math is there's not many variables there. It's is the most consistent, wonderful thing there is. So marrying those two things together, I thought this is something where I can truly I don't know, I can truly do something that my kids are proud of and I can help change people's lives and I can show that, that single mom out there that she has a choice or that person who's struggling with, do I leave my kids to work and let somebody else raise my children and they're struggling with that they actually do have a choice. And so we in August of 2024 I launched the 1 Hour Bookkeeper and we are proud to train stay-at-home moms and dads and military spouses on how to become paid professional bookkeepers.
wow. That's quite a service, and it's an amazing way for people who traditionally have trouble finding jobs because of their schedule is insane, and to be a bookkeeper is just doing the books whenever you have a moment to do it, and so being able to do that and to kind of teach a whole new generation of people how to fish or how to fish in their own way is I think that's amazing. I love that.
And that's what it is. It is teaching them how to fish in their own way. And in some cases, it's teaching them how to fish in their own backyards. But in
Yeah.
other cases, it's really showing them that, if you're a military spouse, I mean, there's certain countries where maybe your husband or your wife, no judgment there, but your spouse is going to work on a base somewhere. There's certain
Mhm.
countries where they're not allowed to work in that
Yeah.
country. And so, the jobs in that country are for citizens of that country, which is so crazy to me. And when I had first heard about that, it was a result of our oldest son decided when he graduated from high school, he wanted to go into the Marine Corps, and we fully supported him. Um, and listening to his friends and their spouses and the
Mm.
challenges that they were having with they're living on this military salary that is, I mean, nobody's getting wealthy off of that. We'll just say that. And they're trying to make
Mhm.
ends meet, but because of the schedules, it becomes almost impossible for that spouse to find a job. It's either a
Yeah.
location challenge or it's a just the hours that your spouse is working challenge. And so bookkeeping really fits in quite nicely. And because they can be located in, you know, my son's in South Carolina and I'm in California. You're in New York, right? You're in East
Mhm.
Coast area. So I think about Northern California and I think, well, there's, job opportunities everywhere here. We're in Sacramento, we're in the state capital. I just don't think about living in a rural town where there's really not opportunities. And most of
Mhm.
these military bases that's it. It's a military base. It's, maybe if they go 30 miles, there's a town that has some jobs, but that's a significant commute. And so if there's something that they can do and they can be of service to clients anywhere, it
Mhm.
becomes, it becomes a win-win. And so I do trainings and I'll have a few people who we've got babies that are in the training meetings with us. And, it's fine. It doesn't mean just because you have a baby that your brain goes away. So it's helping. I think it's helping moms and dads to stay pretty sane too. I'll give myself credit for that as well.
Well, and that'll be the next generation as they're watching their parents do it. They'll be sitting under their feet while they're doing their bookkeeping and watching them. And you never know, they might be the next Melissa out there starting their own bookkeeping business.
I would love that. I would love to hear about a second generation or maybe even a third generation. But it's it's just it's gratifying to share with people that they have a choice. And it's gratifying to have, I was when my oldest son was born, I felt so torn between leaving him and going to work. And it felt like if there was something I could do so that another mom didn't have to feel torn in that way, that I've done good in the world. And maybe that sounds a little bit silly, but I really feel, I don't know, that's what gets me up every morning, and that's what really motivates me, because I also knew that I wasn't the mom who was going to be happy with just being at home and having my whole life be all about my kids. I knew that I needed something for me, and I think there's a lot of other people out there that are like that as well.
Well, I think that's very admirable, and I love that you're doing that for these folks. And I encourage people, if you're interested or you know somebody be interested, check out Melissa's website that in the show notes so that you can get them connected with these sessions that Melissa's doing. And Melissa, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This has been a great conversation. I hope our audience has learned as much as I've learned, and just thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thanks, Adam.
This has been Count Me In, IMA's podcast, providing you with the latest perspectives of thought leaders from the accounting and finance profession. If you like what you heard and you'd like to be counted in for more relevant accounting and finance education, visit IMA's website at www.imanet.org.